The forge never slept in Flea Bottom. Even in the dead of night, when rats ruled the alleys and drunks whispered curses to the moon, the fire at the smithy burned. Gendry's hammer rose and fell like a heartbeat, shaping iron, losing himself in its rhythm, as if heat and steel were the only things that ever accepted him for who he was. He didn't remember his mother's face, only the smell of lavender when she held him once. Then nothing. Just the silence of being left at the doors of a blacksmith in King's Landing. They said he was just another orphan, another unwanted, but there was something in the way the gold cloaks avoided looking too long at him. Something in how Lord Arryn once visited the shop, stared at him with pity and whispered, "He's got the Baratheon jaw." Gendry never understood what it meant until the war ended and the dragons flew. When Daenerys came with fire and Jon Snow's truth unraveled like old thread, the realm trembled. Names lost their meaning, loyalties scattered like ashes. But Gendry remained where he always was, at the edge of the war, watching, hammer in hand, waiting to be called something more than bastard. Then Ser Davos found him again. "You've got king's blood in your veins, lad," Davos had said, eyes serious beneath his rough brows. "Not just for spells or leeches. It's time. You learn who you are." Gendry laughed then bitterly. "I'm a blacksmith. That's all I've ever been. That's all anyone's ever let me be." But the old knight shook his head. "You're Robert Baratheon's son, and the last of his true blood." It should have meant nothing. Titles, thrones, none. Of it fed the poor or stopped the dying. Gendry had seen too much death in the streets of King's Landing to believe in crowns. But when Jon Snow bent the knee to Daenerys, when people whispered of madness behind her beauty, something in Gendry twisted. Then came Arya. She walked into the smithy like she always did, quiet, sharp, with eyes that had seen too much. "They're giving Storm's End to you," she said simply. Gendry nearly dropped his hammer. "What?" "Dany wants loyalty. You're Robert's son. Giving you a castle keeps you close to us and controlled." He stared at her, blinking. "So I'm a reward now?" She didn't answer. She never did when the truth was ugly. But he took the castle. Not for power, not for pride, but to finally stand in a room without people looking down on him. Storm's End was cold, lonely, and filled with ghosts of kings who died for nothing. He didn't belong there, but he stayed, waiting, watching, and the realm burned again. Daenerys' fury scorched King's Landing to black bones. Jon Snow plunged a blade into her heart, and the realm shattered. Then came the council, lords and ladies arguing over who should rule a broken world. Samwell Tarly spoke of democracy. They laughed. Tyrion Lannister spoke of stories. They listened. And Gendry, he wasn't even invited. The son of a king, forgotten. When Bran the Broken was named king, Gendry stood in silence. No one looked at him, not Arya, not Jon, not even Davos. He wasn't a threat, he wasn't a choice. He was just there, as if having royal blood wasn't enough. That night, Gendry sat alone in Storm's End, staring at the Baratheon sigil. A stag, proud, silent, alone. He remembered his father, a name more than a man. Robert the usurper, Robert the drunk, Robert the fool who let the crown crush him. Was he meant to be better? He had no answer, only a growing rage, not at those who sat on thrones, but at a world that never believed someone like him could wear one. Not because he was unworthy, but because he was born in a gutter. Because no one wanted a blacksmith crowned. The ravens came in the morning, their black wings slicing through the fog that rolled over Storm's End like a shroud. Gendry didn't read the letters at first. He tossed them on the long, dust-covered table in the war room, where old maps still lay stretched and curling from age. But eventually, curiosity pulled him in like it always did. They weren't invitations, they were orders. The new king, Bran the Broken, was summoning the lords of Westeros to a council in King's Landing. Reconstruction, he wrote. Peace. A new age of unity. Gendry scoffed at the words. He'd seen what peace looked like from the gutters, starving children, dead women clinging to burned bricks. And now they expected him to smile in a circle of nobles who hadn't bled for a single inch of the realm. He went anyway. Storm's End deserved a voice. even if it was his. The castle gates of King's Landing were half rebuilt, half charred. The smell of ash still clung to the stones. Gendry rode through like a shadow, no fanfare, no banners, just the silence of recognition. Some bowed, others looked away, but most didn't even care. The small council chamber hadn't changed. Tyrion sat at the head beside the king, flanked by Davos Brienne and Lord Robin Arryn, grown taller but still empty in the eyes. Samwell Tarly smiled faintly when Gendry entered, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Lord Baratheon," Tyrion said. The name still felt foreign in his mouth. "I'm a blacksmith," Gendry replied, taking his seat. A few chuckled. Tyrion didn't. They spoke of grain shortages, rebuilding fleets, raising taxes. No one mentioned the bodies still being pulled from the rubble. Gendry waited, and waited, until he couldn't anymore. "Is anyone going to talk about it?" he said. Silence. "About what?" asked Lord Royce. Gendry stood slowly. "That no one here speaks for the people, not truly. You speak for banners and names, not the hungry, not the lost. You speak for yourselves." Tyrion exhaled, his voice level. "And who would you have us speak for, Lord Gendry? You?" Gendry stared at him. "Why not?" The air cracked. "I was born in Flea Bottom. I forged steel to feed myself. I buried friends who died nameless, because your wars didn't spare room for them. I didn't grow up with books or titles. But I know pain. I know work. I know what it's like to be used by those who think crowns make them gods." King Bran didn't move. He just watched, his eyes deeper than his years, but colder too. Tyrion leaned forward, fingers steepled. "What are you saying, Gendry?" "I'm saying maybe it's time for a different kind of ruler." The words fell like a sword on a feast table. Even Davos looked up. "You mean to claim the throne?" Brienne asked, her voice not unkind, just surprised. Gendry met her gaze. "I mean to remind you all that bloodlines don't make leaders, choices do." The council erupted. Voices clashed like blades. Lords shouted about treason. Others mumbled about legitimacy. Gendry didn't shout, he didn't need to. Then Arya stepped forward. She hadn't spoken all day, but now her voice cut clean. "Gendry speaks truth. Maybe none of us deserve to rule." A hush fell. Arya turned to him, her expression unreadable. "But truth doesn't win thrones. Gendry, power does." He didn't blink. "Then maybe it's time someone took power who never asked for it." Later that night, as he walked the silent halls of the Red Keep, memories swirled, of when he'd first swung a hammer, of Melisandre's, leeches, of Arya's kiss, of being told again and again that he was less. Now for the first time the realm had heard him, and somewhere deep inside, a dangerous idea began to grow. He wouldn't ask to be king. He'd show them why he should have been all along. Storm's End had always stood like a stubborn giant, daring the sea to break it. And now, within those battered walls, Gendry Baratheon was becoming just as immovable. He returned from King's Landing not as a guest of the crown, but as a threat. Quiet, slow-moving, but real. The realm didn't erupt overnight, it cracked in whispers. In the Riverlands, former bannermen of House Tully began sending letters, curious and cautious. In the Reach, farmers still rebuilding their homes began hearing tales of a lord who had once worked the forge beside commoners. And in the north, even Sansa couldn't ignore the question circling her court. Why was the king's blood still swinging? Hammers while broken kings ruled from chairs. But Gendry didn't rally armies. He held feasts. At Storm's End, the gates opened for the poor. Ale was poured without tax. Grain was distributed. The forge roared day and night, not to make swords, but plows, nails, tools. "Rebuild with your hands," he told them. "The same hands that bled for kings who never knew your names." And they listened, because he didn't speak like a noble. He cursed, he joked, he ate with them. And in those small moments, the seeds of something dangerous took root. Hope. Arya watched from the shadows, never staying too long. She moved like a ghost through the halls of Storm's End, sleeping little, speaking less. She'd seen what crowns did to men, even good ones, especially good ones. One evening, as the storm pounded the cliffs, she cornered him by the fire. "You're building something," she said. Gendry didn't deny it. She stared at him for a long time. "You think you're ready to rule?" "No," he replied, "but I'm ready to stop pretending others are better." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll make enemies." "I already have. They'll try to kill you." "They already tried." She stepped closer, voice low. "I left because I didn't want to see you become this." Gendry's voice cracked. "What? A man who finally wants more?" "No," she said. "A man who loses himself chasing it." He reached out, gently touching her wrist. "Then stay, remind me who I am." She didn't pull away, but she didn't stay either. That night she rode out under cover of storm clouds, and Gendry stood alone, watching her disappear again. In King's Landing, Bran knew. Ravens whispered, nobles gossiped. Tyrion drank more. "He's becoming a symbol," Samwell said gently. "Not a rebel, not yet, but people remember who he is, who his father was." Tyrion rubbed his temples. "Robert was a drunk with a hammer. Now his son is a sober one with a following." "We could invite him back," Davos suggested. "Offer him something more. Keep him close." Tyrion looked at the king. "Or we do nothing. Let the wave pass." But Bran's words, cold and final, echoed across the chamber. "No wave ever passes. It only breaks sooner or later." By spring, the river folk began calling him King of the Forgotten. Minstrels wrote songs about the Lord of Flame and Steel. And one night, a raven arrived at Storm's End. Its scroll bore no signature, only a message: "The realm may not want a blacksmith crowned, but it needs one." With it came a sigil drawn in rough ink: the direwolf of Stark, the lion of Lannister, the rose of Tyrell, the stag of Baratheon. United in a circle, not a declaration of war, but a beginning. The raven came at dawn, its wings wet with mist and warning. Gendry opened the scroll slowly, expecting another plea, another alliance, maybe even a threat. But what he read froze. His blood. "Your claim is a lie. Robert was not your father. No name, no seal. Just a blade of words, sharp enough to cut through everything he had built." He stared at the parchment, his hands trembling despite the years of fire-hardened strength. The message wasn't just meant to threaten, it was meant to unmake him. And worse. A part of him wondered if it was true. He had never seen proof. No letters, no name spoken in the open. Just whispers. Just that one moment when Jon Arryn had visited the forge and stared too long. Just Stannis years ago, ordering Melisandre to burn leeches drawn from Gendry's blood, calling him Robert's bastard. But men like that didn't need truth. They only needed convenience. What if they lied? What if he really was nobody? He didn't tell his court. Not yet. But something changed that morning. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. He walked through Storm's End like a man moving through fog. The blacksmith who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with commoners now looked like a man haunted by the crown he hadn't even claimed. It was Arya who returned that evening, silent as a whisper, her eyes sharper than any blade she'd ever carried. "You look like someone tried to bury you," she said. Gendry gave her the letter. She read it. Twice, then she tore it in half and dropped it into the fire. "You believe that?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "I never saw proof. What if they made me believe it just to use me? Stannis, Davos, the council. Maybe I was always just convenient." Arya stepped close. "You think people follow you because you're Robert's son?" His silence said everything. She grabbed his hand and shoved it toward the flames. "You see that? That hand worked a forge. It saved people. You bled for others. You stood when kings fled. You earned what you have, Gendry. Not because of a name, because of you." Still, doubt clung to him like rust. That night, a group of riders arrived, disheveled, wounded, and angry. One of them carried a torn banner, the Blackfish of House Tully. They had fled the Riverlands. "Lannister loyalists are regrouping," one of them said. "They burned harvests, slaughtered villages. We rode for King's Landing. They turned us away." "Why?" Gendry asked. The man spat blood. "Said Bran's peace didn't stretch this far." Gendry looked at them. Broken men, orphaned. Children, people left behind by a kingdom that claimed to be healing. He called the council that night. They packed into the war room, knights, farmers, smiths, even former sellswards. They had no matching armor, no sigils, just scars, soot, and silence. He stood at the head of the table, eyes sunken but alive again. "I don't care what blood runs in my veins," he said. "The realm's bleeding, and the throne doesn't see it." Someone asked, "What are you saying, my lord?" Gendry looked at the broken map on the wall. "I'm saying it's time we remind the Seven Kingdoms that kings are not chosen, by gods or by birth, but by the people who survive the mess they leave behind." A murmur spread, and then a cheer. It was not loud, not noble, but it was real. And in that small fire of rebellion, Gendry found something stronger than royal blood belief. King's Landing burned in memory more than in fire. The ash had long since been swept, the bodies buried, the stones washed and rebuilt, but the air still carried the scent of ruin. The people walked quieter now, eyes down, hands clutched too. Coat stitched one coin too short. Rebuilding had brought taxes, taxes had brought silence, and silence had begun to feel like peace. Until Gendry returned. He didn't march with a crown. He didn't bring an army of polished knights or fly banners, stitched with golden thread. He came with carts of bread, wagons of tools, dozens of men and women wrapped in patched cloaks and rough armor, eyes forward, heads high. The Forgotten, they called themselves. Farmers, smiths, orphan girls with bows. No names, just wounds, and the will to make sure no one else bore them. Alone, the gates opened slowly, not with horns, not with fanfare, but with fear. Inside the Red Keep, Tyrion stared down at the map table, his hands stiff. "He's not here to parley," he muttered. "He's here to show the realm something it forgot to believe in." Davos stood beside him, tired beyond his years. "We could have backed him from the start." Bran's voice, quiet from the corner, still echoed like thunder. "He will not take the throne." "He may not need to," said Sam. Gendry entered the Red Keep like a man returning to a place that never welcomed him. No guards blocked his way. None dared. He walked with dirt on, his boots sweat on his brow and a quiet rage in his blood. Tyrion met him in the throne room. "Come to claim what's yours?" he asked. Gendry looked past him at the iron throne, twisted steel in shadows, still sharp after all the blood it drank. "No," he said. "I came to break it." Tyrion blinked. "What?" "You want peace, but you hoard power like dragons. Hoarded gold. You speak of rebuilding, but you build on the backs of those who have nothing left. You think you can fix it?" Tyrion asked. "No," Gendry said. "But I can stop lying to myself and pretending this chair ever made anyone a ruler worth following." Behind him, hundreds of the Forgotten waited just beyond the hall. In the streets, crowds gathered, not with pitchforks, but with hope. Bran sat in silence on his wheeled throne. "You don't want the crown?" he asked. "I don't want the lie," Gendry replied. "But if the realm needs a leader, let them choose, not lords, not councils. Let the people speak." The words echoed. Silence. Then Samwell Tarly stepped forward, unrolling a scroll. "I've drafted something," he said. "A charter for a council of guilds, tradesmen, teachers, healers, elected, not born." Tyrion's lips curled into something between a frown and a smile. "A realm ruled by smiths and scholars." "Maybe they'll do less damage," Gendry said. He turned slowly to the throne, walked toward it. Everyone held their breath, and then he placed a hand on the steel and stepped past it. "I don't want to be your king," he said to the hall, "but I'll serve your future." Years later, no songs were written of Gendry's coronation, because there wasn't one. But the realm changed. The Iron Throne was melted down, its steel reforged into farming tools, building supports, bridges. The Red Keep housed a new kind of council, elected by voices that had once been ignored. Lords still ruled, but they shared power with the people. Not perfectly, not easily. But for the first time, with truth, Storm's End became a symbol, a place where anyone could learn a craft, eat without debt, speak without fear. And on stormy nights, they told stories of the man who walked away from a throne, the blacksmith with king's blood who chose the fire of the forge over the cold of a crown.